Hello YouTube, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk a bit about one of my favourite pieces of plastic at the moment, and that's the End Game Gear OP1we. And this mouse is exceptional, and I want to talk you through why I enjoy it so much. So now we've got all of that bollocks out the way, I want to talk a bit about how just good this mouse is, generally speaking in reviewer terms, the exceptional build quality on this thing for the price, for what you pay for it. It really can hang with the best in terms of build quality, coating and all of that stuff. And it costs about half the price, which is truly insane for a product of this quality to be sold so cheap. And I think that's a bit of a homage to End Game Gear and their kind of philosophy as gamers. So a lot of companies claim to be gamers, they're gamers making products for gamers, but they also do typically try to push for a lot of profit, which is what companies do. End Game Gear seem to be prioritizing gamers over making huge amounts of money, because I bought this mouse for £60 in the November Black Friday sale. I think it sells normally for about £72, which is the same as the OP1 8K as well, which is probably £20 cheaper than I would have expected to pay for this mouse. I think I would go so far to say that this is the best mouse I've used under £100. It is so exceptionally good. There are a few things that I think are worth covering off though, that are like preference things that you may find that you don't like, which are things that I personally do. So one of those things is the clicks. So the clicks on the OP1we are quite heavy when compared to other mice. And I would say that most mice I try these days are pretty sort of crispy in their click implementation, how they feel and how they kind of respond to the click. I would say that the OP1we, specifically the WE, is quite thocky, if that makes sense. To use like keyboard terms, it feels very different to most other clicks I've tried. I find it really good on cloth pads. I wouldn't necessarily enjoy it so much on a glass pad, because of the reduced friction you get on glass. If you were a heavy clicker and you were trying to be really precise with your movement, say in CS2 or Valorant, and you have a heavy click, you're making a wide swipe, that click being so heavy on this mouse on a low friction mouse pad could throw your aim off course. It could knock your cursor off the head. That kind of dynamic is not what you want typically in tactical shooters. Whereas when I use this mouse on a cloth pad, typically a controlled cloth pad, I find that it doesn't have that same effect. It doesn't knock my aim off target, and I quite like how heavy these clicks are. It's just another nice experience, a different experience from some of my other mice. So those are the clicks. I think if you're worried about the clicks being too heavy, then just buy the OP1 8K. I think you can buy switch packs and basically hot swappable mouse at that point with the OP1 8K, so you can tailor it to your needs. The next thing I want to talk about is the scroll wheel, and there's really not much to say here other than the fact that it's just brilliant. It's really nice. It's quite a small wheel, but it does everything you would want a scroll wheel to do. It's really nicely defined. It's really easy to press. There's no sort of distracting factors there at all. And the only nitpick I have on this mouse, which is me just being a typical reviewer, making a mountain out of a molehill, is that the side buttons don't feel quite as tactile as I would like them to be, but they've not impacted me in game at all. I've used them reliably and they functioned pretty well for me. So I kind of touched on it already. The coating on the OP1we is insane. It's really grippy. It feels pretty rubbery, which is really unusual for a mouse at this price point. So to compare it to the Ninjutsu Sora, which I do actually like this mouse, but I'm going to be a bit harsh on it now. This is just bare plastic and it feels like shit in my hands. I really don't know why they're selling it for so much without having a coating on it. When you compare that to the OP1we, this mouse feels exceptionally grippy, and it's almost as good as the Waxi coating, which is my favourite coating ever. So they've done a really good job here. Again, for like a fraction of the cost of one of those Waxi mice, they've done really well to incorporate such a quality premium coating here. So I've mentioned already that this mouse is really good for fingertip grip, and I can hold it in quite a few different ways. I won't go through all of them in great detail, but this kind of grip is a really nice one for me on the OP1we. I just kind of hold it like that. And although the mouse is probably quite a high hump for some people to Fingertip, I don't ever notice it in game. You know, it doesn't touch my hands, but my hands are quite large compared to other people, so just bear that in mind. If you've got small hands, you might not be able to fingertip grip this one. But I also have had good success with an extended fingertip grip, and that's just not touching my my knuckles at all. You know, I'm just kind of hovering over the top. It's a really nice extended fingertip grip experience. I have had an awful lot of success with this mouse in fingertip grip, and it's probably my favourite fingertip experience at the moment. It's also probably, other than the NP01 and maybe the Zowie U2, my favourite claw grip experience too, which is really strange to say that about a mouse that cost this little. So to summarise, because I could bang on for a long time and I feel like I've said everything I needed to say, this mouse is so good for the price. I actually think this mouse is pretty safe as well. So I think most people would get on pretty well with the shape of this mouse, because a lot of the polarizing features of, say, the Lamzu Atlantis, being that it's got a really fast or sharp taper on the sides and it's really wide at the back, doesn't necessarily hit quite so hard on the OP1. So the OP1 sides aren't as tapered as the Lamzu Atlantis, which is good, I think. It's nice to have sort of straight sides, particularly for fingertip grip. I mean, you can see on the bumpers they're kind of tapered at the front, but that just helps you with your purchase to pick it up and move it around. It's not too aggressive in the taper. So I think this shape is really safe. I think most people that are new to peripherals and don't know what mouse to buy should probably give the End Game Gear OP1 a go, whether it's the WE or the 8K, because it is a bang-in product and I think most people would have a good time with it. The only grip I don't recommend this for is a palm grip. So if you know that you're going to be a palm gripper, don't buy the OP1we. If you're possibly a claw or a fingertip gripper, I think this will do you really well. So I think if anyone is looking for a mouse recommendation and they're sort of a budget gamer and they're looking for something around that sort of sub £100 price point, this will definitely be one of the mice that I recommend going forward, because it is such a good performer. Everything about it is exceptional. The only slight nitpick I have is the side buttons, and that really is just a non-factor. It's just me being picky. So let me know what you think. Have you tried the OP1? And if not, are you going to give it a go now? All right, peace out. Bye-bye. It feels like a bit of a unique approach to a claw grip mouse, which I actually have really gelled well with. So by comparison to the Lamzu Atlantis, we'll do this in stages. The Sora is much thinner and the hips on the Sora don't make quite so much contact with my hand, which means I get a little bit more maneuverability with the mouse in my aim, but it also feels a little bit freer, you know, in the way that I use it. And then compared to the Sora, the OP1 is much skinnier again, to the point where it's almost a completely different feeling kind of product. So I would say the main difference between the OP1 and most other mice is that it's just exceptionally thin. So this front section here is about the same width, I think, without actually getting the calipers out, as the NP01S, which I reflected on in previous reviews as feeling like I was aiming with a scalpel because it's so thin. Kind of feels like, you know, some people sometimes refer to these mice as holding a pen as you aim. I mean, it doesn't feel like that really, but by comparison to the Atlantis, it feels so much thinner. It's a really unique kind of fun aiming experience if you hold it from the front. And that's one of the reasons why I like it in fingertip grip, is because it's so thin and it's so maneuverable. So one of the things I've grown to really enjoy about this mouse specifically is because it is quite thin at the back too, although it does flare out, as you can see. What I typically do is I push it a little bit further forward in my hand and I grab it with these bits. So I do a pincer claw, a pincer relaxed claw, I think. These names for these grips get complex, don't they? But I kind of pincer relaxed claw it. And I find this to be exceptional for how I would hold this mouse and play with it. It's really fun. It's a really fun experience. And because it's so small and, you know, the hump on the back isn't as wide as the other mice, it is so easy to transition, you know, in game from a relaxed pincer claw to any other kind of grip without it really having an impact on how you're aiming, because it's not making any sort of unnecessary contact with the side of your hand when you don't want it to, because it's not quite as wide. I do, for some reason, get a lot of stability from the OP1we. I typically would pair the OP1 with a control mouse pad, because it's just how I prefer to game when I'm not using glass. I typically will use the GSR2 or maybe the Vaxi PA. Those are my two kind of favourite cloth pads at the moment. And this mouse is just so easy to throw around in whatever grip I want to throw at it on those pads. So easy to control that the smaller size profile in the width isn't necessarily so noticeable as to if I was playing on it on a glass surface.